On the 19th of May 1536, Anne Boleyn, the Queen of England and the second wife of King Henry VIII, walked out in front of a crowd calmly at the Tower of London. Anne had forced the king's hand years before, leading him to split from Rome as the Pope would not grant him the divorce or annulment he needed to marry her. But within 3 years of her coronation, Anne was executed on the scaffold. Following her death, her remains were picked up by her ladies, a number of them who'd stayed with her during her death, and were placed inside an oak chest, which once held bow staves. After this, the headless body was taken into the Tower's chapel, a short distance away where it was buried. But there was a significant mystery about the man who struck off the Queen's head. The executioner who took Anne Boleyn's life was an expert and was considered one of the greatest executioners and swordsmen across Europe, and he was even summoned from France to execute the English Queen. But he was referred to only as the Sword of Calais, and today he remains a mysterious figure. But what do we know about him? Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. The man who executed Anne Boleyn was considered a first-class executioner and an expert in the use of the heavy continental executioner's sword, which could cut the head off a prisoner who was kneeling upright, in place of the clumsier English axe, kneeling the prisoner's chin on the block. When Cromwell orchestrated the downfall of Anne Boleyn, and when the sentence of death was passed, Henry VIII had a dilemma as to how he could take the life of his wife. For centuries the axe was used in England in executions to take the lives of the condemned, but the axe was considered a rather unreliable method of execution, as things could go wrong, and it often took more than one swing of the axe to take a life. Margaret Pole, the Countess of Salisbury, took many swings of the axe, and this still did not kill her. Also, Mary Queen of Scots took 2 swings of the axe, and still her head had not come off. Usually executions at Tower Hill use the axe, and some of these throughout history were rather poorly done. For example, James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth's death was so badly performed that the executioner Jack Ketch almost incited a riot and ended up on the block himself. Because of the reliability of the axe, Henry VIII summoned a continental European executioner to do the job. He wanted Anne to die with some dignity, and to not encounter any problems with the reliability of the man performing the job. Execution by sword was seen as a quicker method of execution too, and the executioner's sword, if sharp enough and swung quick enough, could result in a quick and rapid execution. England at the time did not have its own swordsman, as the axe was preferred, and Cromwell sent to France where executions of the nobility were performed using sword, and Calais at the time was the last piece of English land on the continent. It's a town for certain where the executioner would have departed from to begin his voyage to England. Sir William Kingston, the Constable of the Tower of London, wrote to Cromwell about the execution, and he said, "I am very glad to hear the executor of Calais, for he can handle that matter." There was another account which does cast doubt on the executioner being from Calais, as Mary of Hungary wrote, "I hope the English will not do much against us now, as we are free from this lady Anne Boleyn, who was a good Frenchwoman." That the vengeance might be executed by the Emperor's subject, he sent for the executioner of Saint Omer, as there were none in England good enough. Some historians believe that the executioner was from Calais, but he may have also worked in Saint Omer, where he performed his bloody job. But the Sword of Calais' reputation spread even to his victim Anne Boleyn, who was recorded to have said that she heard the executioner was very good, and she claimed she had a little neck that would be of no trouble for him at all, ensuring she had a quick and clean death. Execution by sword was used across Europe for those of high birth, so maybe Henry VIII got the inspiration for Anne's execution from the continent in this regard. The exact name of the executioner is not known, and it would be somehow possible to find out who this was, as the local records of Calais from the 16th century must contain information regarding executioners who worked using sword at the time. But it's not known what his name is, or where he was born, or when he was born, and this is because of the disguise element that many executioners used over the centuries. Even during high-profile executions, executioners would prefer to remain anonymous. For example, during the death of King Charles I, it was very difficult for Parliament to find a man who would take the life of a king, a man many believed was sent by God to rule England. But the man who took the job did so in such disguise that still today his identity is debated. After arriving from Calais, the executioner would have made the short journey towards the Tower of London, and he may have even been put up inside the tower whilst final preparations were made for Anne's execution. This means that possibly the executioner and victim were staying within the same walls in Anne's final days. But it's believed that it was merely a day or two before the execution took place that the Sword of Calais arrived. Anne, when she made her way to the scaffold, she would have seen the executioner wearing a hood covering his face, and this was a tradition. As she came to the scaffold and spoke to the crowd, the executioner would have then fell to his knees and begged for Anne's forgiveness, that the fact he was taking her life would not damage his chances of getting into heaven later. The Sword of Calais was paid by the council and the king to take Anne's life, but Anne would also have passed him a purse of gold coins. This was to make sure in death the sword did a good job, being given a final tip before he then picked up the sword. As was different to execution by axe, Anne would have then knelt on the scaffold, and there would have been no need for a block at all. Before this she did remove her outer gown, and her ladies helped her do this. But the Sword of Calais would perform one final act of kindness towards Queen Anne Boleyn, before he ended her life. As Anne was on her knees on the scaffold, the executioner called over to his assistant for his sword, and he shouted, "Bring me my sword," and with this Anne turned her head to watch the steps of the executioner that she heard behind him. So she was looking the wrong way, when the executioner unveiled his sword from a pile of straw, which shocked the audience, and whilst Anne was looking the wrong way, expecting the blade to come from the other direction, the executioner's sword swung and took her head clean off, and Anne Boleyn did not see it coming. Her head was struck off by the executioner in one successful swing of the sharp and heavy sword. After Anne's execution, her ladies collected her head, and the executioner did not hold it up to the crowd, which went against tradition. Usually those deemed traitors had their heads shown to a crowd, but out of respect the executioner did not do this for the 200 people who were there to witness. This could have been out of respect to the fact she was a queen, but the executioner then took Anne's gown, which she took off, and he quickly left with his sword and his assistant, exiting the Tower of London before Anne was even in the ground. It was later said that 100 crowns were paid to the executioner of Calais for his reward and apparel, the apparel being the gown of Anne Boleyn, after the King's Council had agreed to buy it back. They wanted to ensure that nothing of King Henry VIII's second wife existed, and this is why they brought it back from the executioner. But it's not known what happened to the sword that took Anne Boleyn's life. Many executioners live secret lives, and it's likely that the sword would have remained in the executioner's home, and when he passed away, it may have been sold to a soldier or a noble who wished to use it in battle. But Anne Boleyn's execution was one of the most shocking in English history, and it caused chaos across England, with many of her supporters shocked and disgusted that a queen was executed on the orders of her husband. But the Sword of Calais was the man who took the life of a queen, and much of what is known about him today remains unknown and a mystery. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.